Okay, all right. There we go.
We are now recording, so I can share again.
Cool. Nice one. Thanks so much, Em. So, hello everybody and welcome. I know it's been a long day, so thank you for joining us. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by both Em from last time, but also Poppy, who we'll introduce in a second, so that we can basically look at virtual patient consultations and history taking. If we go on to number 2, please, just for the disclaimer, obviously, because this is going out public domain, I need to just say this. Firstly, this is in an educational capacity, and if any members of the public do see this and have concerns about their health, then they should contact their medical practitioner. So that's really important to get that out of the way. Just before we go on to the next one, can anybody remember what that quote that I mentioned was in terms of Sir William Osler? And if not, it doesn't matter, but I'll take silence as not. So
was it not or was it he who studies medicine without books sails an uncharted sea, and he who studies medicine without patients does not sail at all, or something
yes,
like that.
Fantastic. Yes, does not go to sea at all. Brilliant. So if we go on to the next one, please. I get that it's a difficult time for you all, but also it's actually a massive opportunity. And what these series of sessions are going to be about is how do we use the situation that we find ourselves in from a COVID perspective to utilize the tools, the technology that we've got at our disposal. And we've started doing that, but it's genuinely just the start. And I put 2 special logos there because we can only do this if people like Poppy, like Em, give up their time and come and help us and also help you learn. So I would really encourage you to get as much as you can from this session. There's only 2 more slides. Number 4, if we go to that one, please, Em, is basically a structure for what we're going to do now. There's going to be a little intro from Em about Generation Z. You guys are all Generation Z, but what you didn't necessarily know is it's Generation Z for Zoom. Then that is going to set us up in terms of how you can get as much from this as possible. And then 15-minute history that I will have a chat with Poppy and take a history in inverted commas, because remember what I've mentioned about the taking history element. It's not the best terminology, it's not the best language. And then you guys will be marking me. You've got that feedback form. And genuinely, I'm keen to know what you think went well, but also areas for me to improve. Because if you can critique my performance and the way that I do things, then it will also improve how you do it when it comes to not only the exams, but also clinical practice. And then finally, there's an opportunity. If somebody on the call would like to have a go, taking a history from Poppy, in a very supportive environment, we'll all chip in, we'll all feedback. That's open to you if you'd like to do that. And then finally, the last half will be Poppy's asthma story, and it's that in-depth discussion and interview where you can chip in a more informal way. But because we're wanting to try and write this up, and because we're wanting to export best practice from HIMSS, that really is it. I could do loads of histories, but that's not really the point. It's a case of getting you guys starting to do it and learning, and then we getting the feedback. So if we go to the final slide, please, Anne, which is just this beautiful photo that I didn't take in London, but I like using this in as many talks as possible. We'll let Poppy introduce herself, and then we'll hand over to Em for the Generation Z piece. Let's see. Is Poppy? Where's Poppy? Yeah, here we go. Go over to you, Poppy.
Ready for me to take it away? So my name is Poppy, and thank you for having me here tonight. I was first diagnosed with asthma aged 11, although I was definitely showing symptoms prior to that, but didn't have a diagnosis until I was 11. And it wasn't until age 13 that I had my first intubation. I won't give too much away because I know we're going to talk about my history, but so I'll leave some of it behind, some of it back for you to ask me, but I live a very different life now for many reasons, through natural resources and also amazing medicine. So what I'm on, again, which I'll talk about as time goes on. But I like to spend my time now helping others understand asthma and the many forms in which it can take on, because it's not as black and white as one condition, you know, set symptoms for every single person. There's lots of different variables that come into play, and it affects you in lots of different ways. I also work now as a presenter, which is something I never imagined I'd be able to do, because there were days I used to struggle walking up the stairs on my own, or go to the loo unaided, anything like that. You know, there were days that I really couldn't look after myself. So I didn't think I'd be speaking for a job, that's for sure. And then I also trained in nutritional therapy. I'm not practicing at the moment because other things are quite busy, but I wanted to learn about nutrition and how to better look after myself. But I think nutrition's amazing. I think medicine's amazing. And I think you are all amazing. And I'm just happy to be here to help, basically. So please feel free to ask me anything. As I said on the intro, I'm an open book. Anything I can help with or answer, that's what I'm here for. So yeah, anything that I can be of assistance with, just let me know.
Cool. Thanks so much, Poppy. That's amazing. If we hand over to M for Generation Zoom.
Generation Zoom, yes. Now, just a little bit of my background before you knew me as an MS patient. I have been a life coach, business coach from 2005. So I see the world in a totally different way. And I have been, well, one of my longest business clients for the past 9 years is involved in the virtual learning environment, the VLE space. So you'll know it as Blackboard, you may have seen Moodle, you'll have had G drives and all sorts of things come into your education as you've grown up. But I've seen this in its infancy, and I've been privileged to be able to use it. I've been an early adopter of this. So I am really, really, really passionate about how learning can be done in the virtual environment. Now, as an example, one of my clients, not the one I was talking about, is an MOD, virtual learning environment. So the Ministry of Defence have to teach their people out in deployment in the middle of air bases in far-flung places that have just got an internet connection, because they have to have skills that are kept up to date. To be able to fly a plane, you need to do your simulation testing, to do all of these things. So there's been a need, a real drive to that. And I firmly believe that what will come out of this pandemic is an embracing of virtual learning environments for everybody. You can see it in school. My daughter now goes to school at 9 o'clock. She goes in her school uniform. She's at her desk with a register, with her headphones on, eyes down looking, and she is in Zoom school. It's amazing. I do not have to teach my daughter. The first lockdown was hell. We've got an opportunity now to do something so much better. And yes, you can't physically put your hands on your patients, but this gives you the breathing space, the ability to go out there and learn, to research, to think, hang on a minute, I've heard of this before. I've read it in a book somewhere. I've seen this. I've seen a YouTube video. One of my friends was talking about down the pub. Someone's mum's had this. You've got that ability to manipulate your network. And because you've got the technological tools to do it, you will be able to do it, and you will have better skills. So don't ever think my education's going to suffer because I can't see a patient, because I firmly believe you will be better. You will be the torchbearers. Medicine's come a long way from the four humours and Hippocrates. We are no longer making people puke to make them feel better. We still use leeches, we still use maggots to deal with debriding tissue injuries. But, you know, we've not done things. That's it. We don't do things because we've learned from the past. Thalidomide's no longer used, but at the time it was things. So just because it has been done in the past doesn't mean it should be done now. And you guys are going to be pioneers. You are going to have to be as brave as Rita Levi-Montalcini. Now, my daughter has these wonderful books, and I'm going to send you the picture of what Rita did. But she was I can't tell how many years old, but basically she said here, above all, don't fear difficult moments. The best comes from them. And I'm going to send this to you because it's inspirational. This woman carried on practicing her skills at dissection of neurons on chicken breasts with a tin of things that she took with her fleeing from the Nazis. She's amazing. You guys are going to be in books like this in the future. I'm a firm believer in it. So take as much as you can from Generation Zoom. You are the torchbearers.
Cool. Thanks, Em.
I'm handing over.
No pressure. Thanks, just ramping up the pressure. That's fine. So, okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to set a timer. I'll set one this end, and I've only got 15 minutes, and then yeah. So I'm going to put 15 minutes on that. And if everybody, students-wise, can have the mark sheet out that I've sent them and type comments and thoughts, because we're going to go around. And I believe, just before we start, I believe in something called creative abrasion. So I want you to be as critical as you can of my performance. Forget about lecturer, teacher dynamic. I genuinely want you to be as critical as you can, because it's only through that we can actually improve performance, right? So I'll forget some things. Sorry, I'm gone.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Instead of asking why, Erna, Daisy, Lucy, Isabel, ask how come. That's the only thing I ask you, please. Okay. It will change your experience. Thank you. That's
fine. But be as critical, I genuinely mean, at that as you can, right? So I don't really want lots of discussion after saying, oh, this went well, really, really fine. Be as critical as you can. Then when we feed back to somebody who wants to have a go, and Em's loving it. Here we go. This is also true for Em and Poppy, right? I want you to be hyper critical. But then just to reassure you all that if somebody does have a go, it will be completely different, and it will be positives, improvements, completely different thing, right? Because it's a powerful part of the learning experience. So with that in mind, I'm going to put a timer on. You ready, Poppy?
I think so.
Okay, cool. Here we go. So 3, 2, 1. So Poppy, thank you so much for agreeing to give us some time. My name's Kishan. I'm one of the doctors, and I'm joined by some medical students as well, who you will get to know throughout this call. And I've also joined by Em, who's a patient that has done a session with us on this from an MS perspective. So that's why everybody's on the call. Would it be okay if we could talk a little bit about your asthma, just so I can establish a timeline in terms of what's been going on?
Absolutely. Please ask away.
Brilliant. Thank you. So how old are you, Poppy?
I'm 29. I'll be 30 in October.
Brilliant. And what do you do for work?
So I work as a TV presenter, something I never thought I'd be doing, particularly as there were days that I struggled to get up the stairs or get myself dressed. But now I speak for a living.
Wow. And when you say never thought you'd be able to do it because you couldn't get up the stairs, is this related to your asthma?
It was, yes. Yeah, very much so. So the days I was breathless, or even the weeks on end I could be breathless, I wasn't sure there was a way out at that time. I didn't know if I was going to survive, let alone have a job like I do today. And that is the honest truth. I wasn't sure I'd reach my next birthday at one point, and I told my mum that. And my mum openly says now I'm in a much better place. She didn't want to tell me this at the time, but she said to me now that she felt the same. She wasn't sure I was going to reach my next birthday because we weren't sure where to turn or what was going to happen because my condition was so unpredictable.
Wow. Wow. So what would really help at the moment is if we can get some kind of timeline. So obviously you're 29 now. Mm-hmm. When were you first diagnosed?
I was first diagnosed with asthma age 11, so onset of puberty for me. And there is a reason I'm mentioning that, and that's because we believe there to be a very big link between my asthma and my hormones, which I can go into more detail about in a bit as well. But I was first diagnosed age 11, had symptoms before that, dry coughs, wheeziness, other breathless symptoms that occurred prior to that. But age 11 was when I was first diagnosed and given my first inhaler.
How long prior?
Probably by the age of 7, I imagine, around the age of 7. That was when my mum mentioned it. I mean, I can remember bits of it, but my mum has a clearer perspective on time. Obviously, I was 7, can't remember as much as she could remember of me at that age. But I was, to be honest, I wasn't a terribly well child growing up. I often got coughs and colds and headaches and achiness and general feelings of not being very well. But the lung related symptoms really started to pop up at age 7, and then the diagnosis of asthma came age 11, post a chest infection. Actually, I was playing sports, I was at school, I was doing rounders, and it started raining, and the PE teacher said, "Oh, everyone run under the trees." And my mum said she could see me because she came to watch me that day, but she could see my breath and me labouring. She thought, okay, not sure where this is going. And then I got a chest infection, and that's when they then said, look, actually, you've got asthma. The way that you've reacted to that chest infection and the fact that you get these so often, you have got asthma. And that's when the diagnosis happened. Okay.
You mentioned how you weren't a well child, and we'll pick up on that in a more detailed sort of history. What would be really helpful for me, just so I can get an idea of what happened when, is if you could tell me the sort of years. So you were showing symptoms before, aged about 7. What year? What year was it when you were 7 years old?
Gosh, now you're asking me what year we're in.
I should be able to work it out, to be fair, but I can't. I'm terrible at maths. But don't worry, I'm not going to be prescribing anything for you. So, and if I did, I'd get it checked. It's fine. We'll get another calculator. Let's have a look.
Yeah, God, when would that be?
So 2021.
So it'll be 30
minus. No, it's not 2021. Here we go. So it's 29 minus 7. So it would have been. So it's 22 years ago. Does that sound about right? You were diagnosed in what? Just before 2000. Is that?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
So minus 22. Yes, 1999. And there was a period before that where you were having symptoms like dry cough, wheeze, but was it put down to the fact that you were just a not well child, or were there other causes for this? What happened there?
So the symptoms would have popped up, as you say, around 99, but I was diagnosed age 11, so a couple of years after that. But symptoms wise, coughs, I was quite often getting chest infections, I was susceptible to colds. We weren't sure what was wrong, to be completely honest. And it wasn't really, as I say, until the age of 11, and I'll say it again, the onset of puberty, really, there was that we believed then and know now there is a big link there for my condition, that's when it became very prominent and obvious that I had issues breathing. But prior to that, it was coughs, colds, nothing that perhaps was too obviously correlated to asthma, perhaps someone that didn't have a great immune system, but it was really age 11 that the asthma symptoms were quite obvious. And I believe even someone looking at me could say, I'm pretty sure that girl has asthma, because you could hear the wheeze on me. I would really struggle to breathe.
And it's interesting that you said, so it sounds like you kicked off this discussion really where you were saying that you never thought you would get a job where you were able to speak for a living. And it sounds like at the beginning of your journey with asthma, you had quite a slow, insidious onset, which was pretty non-specific. But then I'm just trying to work out what happened between that story at the beginning for you to say what you said right at the beginning of this consultation, where you said you would never have thought you'd had a job where you were speaking. Was there some kind of moment of crisis in between that timeline?
Yes. So diagnosis age 11, but then I was intubated at age 13, and I was at school and I was in a science lesson and I struggled with
kind of appropriate.
Yeah, sorry, I know, yeah. I'm a little bit funny about blood, so I'd never be able to be a doctor, and I commend what you all do. I think it's incredible. You're obviously all very bright, but I felt a bit woozy in biology because they were talking about the body and the internals. I'm much better now. I've studied it myself just to learn about my own body and so on and so forth, but I wasn't feeling well. and I got taken out of the lesson, and I ended up having an asthma attack. And it wasn't on set of that. I wasn't very well anyway. I was on steroids at the time, but I was taken out of the lesson, and then I was taken to the nurse. They calmed me down, or I say calm me down. My asthma got better throughout that. So my attack disappeared, if you like, after a while. And they said, look, we're going to send you home anyway, because we just want to make sure that you're at home, and that, you know, come back tomorrow when you feel better. My mum wasn't available because she was working, so they called my uncle. And I remember sitting in the car with my uncle on the way home, joking, because he was saying to me, oh, you little skiver. He's like, you're absolutely fine now. He's like, they shouldn't have sent you home. I was like, I know, I really didn't need to go home. And then by the time we got back to the house, it's only about a 20-minute car ride, I started to get worse again, more exacerbated. And by that point, my mum got home, and the next minute she was racing me down to the GP because my peak flow was so low and I was struggling to breathe. And, you know, I was going.
That was literally, you've just been discharged and you're having a decision or conversation as if you're fine. And then you went home and you deteriorated that quickly. Is that, did I get that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So I had an asthma attack at school. Asthma attack ended. You know, I slowly felt like I was able to breathe, and the nurse made the call just to send me home anyway. She said, look, you know, it was the afternoon anyway, and she said, you might as well go home, get yourself fully better, come back the next morning to school. And in about the sort of space of 20-25 minutes, I got seriously exacerbated again, rushed down to the GP to the hospital, and then last thing I remember was passing out in the toilet, actually, at my local hospital, because I got there, I was in the ambulance. And one of the things about asthma that not everyone realizes is it makes you really need a wee. You know, everything's tensed up. And also I find that the more I take of my blue inhaler, my salbutamol or Salamol, Ventolin for whoever's taking which version, really makes me go to the loo all the time. And everything, all your muscles are of course tense as well. So when we got to the hospital, I said, please, I need to go to the loo. And they said, fine, but your mum has to come in with you. I said, no worries. They got me onto the children's ward. My mum went in, and the last thing I remember was looking my mum in the eyes and saying, I'm dying. And then I woke up in Leicester Hospital 2 days later, having been intubated. And after that episode, it was just a roller coaster of up and down, hospital admissions, being admitted, discharged, admitted, discharged.
To that point, I mean, this is very interesting. We'll come on to it more, I'm sure, in the second session of this that we do. But can I just check, how many times have you been admitted to ITU with your asthma?
I've been admitted to ITU 5 times, but ventilated 4, I believe. I think I was admitted once, but
just to keep an eye on you.
Yeah, no, I apologize. It is 4. I've been in intensive care 4 times, and the reason I got that confused for a moment is the last time, which was my most serious exacerbation and ventilation, the most difficult episode in 2013. They put me up there just as precautionary, and they said, we're just going to monitor you because my oxygen levels were pretty good, and I wasn't showing any signs of seriously being seriously depleted, really. But because of my history and how fast I can crash, they made the decision to put me in ITU. And thank God they did, because I fell unconscious and went into respiratory arrest whilst I was in there, and they were able to ventilate me.
Was that the last time, the 8 years ago? Yeah,
I went up there, had a conversation with the doctor. It was all quite easy breezy to begin with, and they said, look, we're going to move you to the respiratory ward tomorrow, stay here one night, just just relax, we'll keep an eye on you. And I remember having a conversation with the doctor saying, oh, where, because my dad's Arabic, and I'd noticed that he was Arabic as well. I said, oh, whereabouts are you from? I said, my dad's from Alexandria. We just got chatting, and my mum was stood there thinking, gosh, she's fine, she's, everything's all good. Right, darling, I'll see you tomorrow. Went home, and then we were texting. It was the early hours of the next morning, and she said, is there anything I can bring you? I said, dry shampoo and a new pair of lungs. And then half an hour later, I was unconscious, and all my monitors were going off, and they had to intubate me.
Wow.
Yeah. So it happened that quick. That's how quick I can go downhill. I can be seemingly fine 1 minute with some symptoms, of course, but things can change rapidly.
So that must have been quite obviously trauma for you. but obviously trauma for your family as well. How have you all coped with dealing with that, and also the COVID-19 pandemic, where you are in a at-risk group? Could you talk to that a little bit, please?
Absolutely. Well, first I'll talk about the immediate effects of it. So the aftermath following the last intubation was traumatizing. There is no other way to describe it. I had amazing care, and I believe myself to be incredibly lucky, but I had PTSD, but I was given a clinical psychologist to see. So that's the immediate aftermath was hard. And I was sorry.
When you say PTSD, if you're comfortable talking about it, what do you mean by that in terms of that acronym? Because it can affect different people in very different ways. And also, I'm not even sure if it's been covered from a student perspective yet. So a really top line overview in terms of what that meant to you would be really helpful.
So I had intensive care post-traumatic stress disorder, and I was scared to go to sleep because I thought I'd die. Because
oh my goodness,
1 minute I couldn't wrap my head around at the time how I could be fine 1 minute and then not, and I would miss portions of my life, some hours, sometimes days, where I wouldn't know where I was. I didn't speak for quite a long time as well when I was in hospital, and they thought they'd damaged my voice box, and we're still not 100% sure why I didn't speak. I think that maybe I was in shock, but I remember people leaning over my bed saying, "Poppy, do you know what day it is? Do you know where you are? Do you know where you live? Do you know what's happening?" And I just wouldn't speak, and they thought, gosh, we might have caused some damage here. And they told my mum, we're not sure if something's happened as a result of because I've been ventilated 4 times by that point, that some damage had been caused. But it turns out that I think I was just in shock and wasn't really sure what was going on. But that's the immediate. In terms of COVID, so today I'm on the shielding list. To be honest, I'm pretty positive these days. The further away we get from that 2013 episode, the better life is, really, because I feel like I've just done another year here. I've had a few blips, I've had a few steroids here and there, or I've scared my partner a few times, because I met my partner after when I was really seriously ill. So, he obviously in the back of his head, he's thinking, gosh, is this going to be perhaps like Poppy was before? And we've really never got to that. But pretty positive these days. I just have to make sure that I do things properly. I'm able to work from home.
So thank you so much for that. But that was 15 minutes. So now in the exams, what the students have to do is present back their findings. So I'm just going to quickly do that, and then we'll do some feedback, if that's right. So I've had a little discussion with Poppy, who's a 29-year-old TV presenter, who the best way to describe it is, although she's relatively stable now, has a significant background history of asthma, where she's been admitted to ITU 5 times, I believe, and ventilated on 4 of those occasions. The journey to which that she was diagnosed with asthma was a bit of a convoluted one, in the sense that although she was diagnosed at 11, she was showing symptoms for 2 or 3 years before that. And then it ramped up to her first intubation being when she was age 13. So in summary, I would say that's Poppy. She remained well over the last 8 years with occasional blips. But the last time that she was intubated did have significant impact in terms of from a PTSD point of view. So thank you so much for your time, Poppy.
My pleasure.
We'll just go to get some feedback from everybody now. And then also think who wants to have a go as well, because when we do say who wants to go, it's first one to say yes gets to do it. So should we go? Ernie, you're on my screen. Do you want to kind of give a bit of feedback? And then we'll just go back around in the order that people are showing on the screen.
I tried to catch you out, to be fair, a lot, and I'm looking for specific things, but you did a lot well. I'll start with positives, like your explanations. Like every time you asked a question, there was an explanation, and you did a lot of summarizing back. Probably the only thing I'd say, and I'm literally clutching at straws, but in the first half, maybe do a bit of nodding or eye contact. I know it's hard over Zoom, but a bit of back.
I think that's a good shout. I think that's a really good shout, and that's something that I struggle with in terms of put my notes down that way, because I couldn't get my back into a position where, if you look at where we had with the call before, I was sitting there at a desk, comfortable writing, and got the eye line perfect, This time it was off. It was completely off. Now Poppy and I know each other, right? So that is what's the word? That was very salvageable, but
Yeah.
it's a fair shout, Erna. If I did not know Poppy, she might not have been as open and discussive in that regard. I don't know. What's your thoughts on that, Poppy, in terms of virtual consultations and eye lines?
100%. Like you say, it's different in this situation because we know each other. We've spoken before. There's that familiarity. Oh my God, there we go. Can you believe I'm a TV presenter? Here we go. It's been a long day. And because of that, obviously I'm going to be more open. But if it were a case of someone you didn't know, then they would definitely be wanting you to look at them straight into their eye line for sure.
Cool. Thank you very much. That's really good feedback. So we'll go to Daisy, I think's next. Have you got any thoughts, comments?
Mine was pretty much the same as Erna's. Like, I was trying to find like criticisms, and the only thing that I wrote down was the eye contact thing. But then I also wrote down that it is hard, like virtually. But I think it was just when you were like making notes, that was literally the only bit I could say. But other than that, I wrote down that I liked the mini summaries throughout, and I liked how sometimes when Poppy maybe made a point, you didn't just leave it there. You kind of were wanting to go into more detail about most of the points that she did bring up.
Okay.
But yeah, that's what I wrote down.
Thank you, Daisy. That's really useful. And also, in the exams, you might not be allowed to write, but it's habit, really, in the sense that I'm so used to seeing patients and writing at the same time in a physical world rather than a virtual world. This is just a great example of that lifelong learning piece that we've always got to sort of continue. So one of either Lucy or Isabel next, please, if somebody can.
I think Emma wanted to say something.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see Emma. Go on then, Emma. Even.
Sorry, Dr. Kishan.
Here we go. Yeah.
You have been conditioned by your experience. These guys will have Zoom consultations and the ability to record. So you won't have to refer back to notes because you'll have a real-time thing that you can transcribe afterwards. You can focus your attention on that person for 20 minutes and say, okay, this is what I understand. I'm going to check back against the recording, make sure I've got everything written down, so you can maintain your rapport.
That's really good. It's a really good shout. Thank you.
Thank
you. Poppy, on.
What I was thinking is a couple of times. So, for example, when I've mentioned being ventilated 4 times, or even the fact that I've been well for a number of years, I'd really like for a doctor to go, why is that? So, for example, 4 times is a lot. Why do I think that might be? And then they could have drawn out quite a bit of information from that. And also, I've been well for a number of years, or when I said, oh, it's a different life for me these days. Why is that as well? And I think those 2 pieces of information, someone could go, gosh, we won't do that again. If there is a reason in there that you think might be in part contributed to me being ventilated 4 times rather than 1 or ever. And what is it that's happening these days? Right. And then, someone might be able to say back to me, well, keep that up, or
Brilliant.
We'll ensure that we continue with what you're doing right now. Let's see what else we might be able to do to ensure if there is somewhere else, which bits aren't working for you, and then we can work on those.
Brilliant. On that point then, who wants to give it a go? And they can kick off with some of those questions as well. It's not as if you haven't seen what's just happened. Does anybody want to give it a go in terms of having a chat with Poppy?
I'm very friendly, I promise.
Sarah, you putting your hand up? I can't see. Are you waving?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sarah said she wants to.
All right then, over to you, Sarah. I'll start the timer, and I will turn this off so I can move around and write. But so, Sarah, if this was an exam, it would be, hello, Sarah, welcome. You've got 15 minutes, if that's okay, to have a chat with Poppy and find out as much as you can about her asthma. I'll give you a warning at 5 minutes, but then after that, we're going to stop bang on 15 minutes. Does that sound okay?
Okay.
Brilliant. And if you just repeat back to me what the instructions are, and then we'll make a start.
The instructions are for me to spend 15 minutes exploring as much as I can about Poppy's asthma.
Fantastic. Off you go when you're ready.
Hi Poppy, my name's Sarah. I'm a medical student at HIMSS and I'm in my gateway year. Is it okay if I ask you some questions about your asthma to help facilitate my learning?
Absolutely, Sarah. Yes, I'd be delighted to help.
Thank you. So let's go from the start. When did you realize asthma was a thing that was bothering you?
So my diagnosis first happened at aged 11, but myself and my mum, who I lived with, and my grandma, realised that there was something going on prior to that, probably a couple of years prior to that, because of the fact that I was so susceptible to coughs and colds and chest infections. So diagnosis age 11, but we felt there was something going on prior to that as well.
Okay. Do you have any history of it in your family if you noticed it was starting at childhood?
Yes, we do. So my dad was rather asthmatic when he was younger, although he seems to have grown out of it now. My brother's had it slightly, but aside from that, nothing on my mum's side. And as I say, I've got a brother and sister. My brother appeared to have it at one point, but also seemed to have grown out of it. So we've seen it, but nothing quite like what I've suffered with.
Okay, so you got diagnosed at 11, but you had some problems earlier, but you've made it all that time. So how have you managed to handle or manage your asthma?
From the age of 11 till now, in general, is that? So management wise, I've had inhalers, I've had asthma plans. Truth be told, my mum and I, well, my mum rather, I should say, more so, kept a diary to really track when I was most exacerbated, what times of the month, times of the year. And we have actually given that to medical professionals previously, this asthma diary, if you like. And it hasn't massively been taken on board, to be honest. Not with everybody, but some of the medical professionals that we've shown, to try and point out that we believe there to be a link between that and my hormones. It's not really been looked at properly until later on.
So what kind of things were wrote in your diary? I noticed you just told me things that exacerbate it, like you believe that your hormones were a key factor. Could you tell me a little bit more about that, please?
Absolutely. Well, the main point that we realised was that just before my period each month, I would get incredibly exacerbated. And actually, incidentally, every time I've been intubated was that time. So we were sure there was something going on. And even now, later in life, I still get it, not to the same degree, and it's much better managed. And I believe that to be down to a couple of factors, medicine and naturopathic resources as well. But it was the same time every month I would get worse. And we wanted to be heard on that, but we weren't heard massively at that time.
That sounds like it would have been something that's quite frustrating. So when you get healthcare for your asthma, is that something that's taken into consideration now?
It is something that is taken into consideration, but it's not something that is necessarily something that is tailored around. So I receive a treatment now that helps me overall, but nothing's really being done for the times that I do still get exacerbated each month. But I in all honesty, because I'm nowhere near as bad as I used to be, and it's not a case of I'm going to be hospitalized at that time of the month, it could just be, I should never say just, because it's never just asthma and it's never just breathing, but because it's less of an issue than it used to be, and overall I'm in a much better place. Honest answer is no, there's nothing really being done by any doctors at the moment about the fact that I still get short of breath that time every month.
How about for you? So is there any like things that you've noticed or you've looked into? I noticed it before you said that you had done some things naturally. What things have you tried?
So it's part of the reason that I trained in nutritional therapy. I wanted to see how else I could take some control, because asthma makes you feel very out of control. So I eat certain foods that I know work best for me. I've understood any intolerances that I have as well. So reducing gluten and having to reduce my dairy, because I understand that if I have too much of those, they can also exacerbate me. And also I've understood that stress is a huge factor in it. So I try to keep my stress levels down. Not always that easy, but I do my best to keep my stress levels as low as possible and just be happy with my life. Because the happier I am, the healthier I feel.
And on that, what is your life like? What do you do?
My life is a far sight different to what it used to look like. I used to think that I wouldn't make my next birthday because I was so unwell, and I was being admitted in that hospital probably anywhere between 3 to 7 times a year. I've been placed in intensive care. I believe it's 4 times, so 4 ventilations, 4 intensive care admissions, but I've been admitted into hospital countless times around that. These days I work as a TV presenter for a health channel, incidentally, and I absolutely adore what I do. And it was after my last serious episode that I decided I was going to change career and see if I could get into this, and here we are today. So yeah, in a great relationship, health's much better, but these are all the things that I wanted to do then, but I couldn't. I would struggle to hold down a job. I struggled to do a full week when I was at school, and I struggled with relationships as well as a result of my condition.
That sounds, you've had to deal with a lot of things, especially with all those hospital admissions and having to pretty much put your whole life on hold for the asthma.
That's how it felt. Yeah.
What sort of things do you do for stress relief?
Pilates. Pilates is a big one. Food actually plays a role in keeping me less stressed. I love cooking. I've been cooking today and managed to grate my finger, so that was pretty stressful. But aside from that, the cooking part I enjoyed. Walking, spending time with friends and family, which obviously we can't do as much of at the moment. However, with that said, I still FaceTime and I still go for walks with my mum. So I do what I can within the current limitations, but being with loved ones, painting, Pilates, and to be honest, even my job, as weird as that may sound, I know there are some stressful days, there are some very stressful days, but doing what I love keeps my stress levels low. Doing something I'm passionate about.
That sounds great. So what's life like at home? Who do you live with?
I live with my partner and our 2 cats, which I am actually allergic to. But when I met my partner, he already had the 2 cats and they came as a package. So, so he made the commitment to move to where we now live in Warwickshire, because he lived a couple of hours away. And I'm a big animal lover, and it's actually good that these days I can live with pets. I still have to be careful, but my current lifestyle and the medication that I'm on actually helps me allow to live with our 2 cats, who are actually right behind me. I've just realised.
That's awesome. What are they called?
Yeah. So we've got Jessie and Dexter. They're brother and sister, and they fight like brother and sister as well.
That's cute. So when did you realise you were allergic to them? Or did you realise just, as you moved in?
No, so I knew from a young age. I knew, gosh, probably 11, because I was sent for allergy tests. So I've had skin prick tests, I've had blood tests, I've had every test I believe imaginable, scans, blood tests, and otherwise. So I know a lot about what I can and cannot eat. I know a lot about my allergies. I know a lot about my body, but even with all that knowledge, even surprisingly at the time, they still couldn't work out what to do with me. So I know a lot about some stuff, but still in the dark about others.
Okay.
Just because it's a natural break, there's 6 minutes left. I know I said 5. Equally, if you burnt 3 questions and you want to have more time with feedback, that's also fine as well.
Okay, yeah. And I've got a couple more questions. So where do you see this going in the future? As you're coping quite well, what do you think that you're going to continue doing? What do you think that you could benefit from?
Oh, can I make a comment of that, Sarah? That is something that I wish I'd been asked well, this obviously is real life, but wish I'd been asked in my clinic, for example, because that's something that's a question that's not been asked of me at the moment. Where do I see it going? I'm on a medication that I have once a month, every month, and I actually asked to come off it at one point because obviously I would rather be well and non-medicated. I think modern medicine is amazing. It saved my life and continues to save my life now. But would I like to see if I've perhaps grown out of my asthma? Would I like to see if I'm better because of my age, or if it's where would I like to see this? I would like to have some tests done to know what the medication is doing to me, if I'm being honest. I would like to know more about what I'm on. I have a great clinic. I have my monthly biologic that I go into hospital for, but I haven't had, and I hate blood tests, as I've mentioned, I don't like blood, but even I am wanting blood tests to know what is going on with my body so that I can see the picture ahead of me. Because if I'm going to stay on this, and Sam and I will want children in a few years, what does that mean for us? So I would like to know more about what my future holds, even though I'm well. What does being on this medication long term mean? That's what I'd like to know, and that is an awesome question.
That's a perfectly reasonable answer. Everybody, yeah, you deserve to have the clarity as well. So to summarize, you've had asthma for a very long time, since you were 7, but diagnosed later. Your brother and your dad have shown some signs of also having it. It gets worse before your periods. Your mum kept a diary of your symptoms, but you felt as though that wasn't really acknowledged until later on. Now you're doing a lot better with your asthma. You're a TV presenter, you have a partner, you're allergic to your 2 cats, but you're dealing with it quite well. You have a busy life, but you take care of your stress, you do Pilates, you paint, you cook. And yeah, in the future, you want to get a full idea of what's happening in your body so that you can make some informed decisions and know everything for the future. Thank you for talking to me. It was very insightful.
Thank you. No, I've really enjoyed speaking with you and drew out loads of information, and particularly that last one when you said about future. It's not something that I'm even being asked at the moment. So that's what patients want to hear. Even when they're well, they can almost be forgotten about, and that's not me to dismiss my care. I'm so lucky. I have just the loveliest nurses, and the clinic is amazing, and they've turned my life around. But I've been on my medication for a number of years now, and I want to know what's next. What does that mean now? Do I just stay on this? Do I have to come off this? What's it going to do to me long term? What if I want children? So yeah, that's I think that you've just asked a question that is really important to us. Oh, you on mute, Kish?
Sorry, I'm on mute. There we go. Well done. Thank you, Poppy, firstly, what I said, but well done, Sarah. That was awesome. I really, really liked how you made it so... You remember what we said in the first lecture with Em about make sure it's not just a checklist, make sure you're not going through the motions with your patients and just filling out the clerking pro forma. And ultimately, the biggest compliment and the biggest bit of feedback you can get is a real life patient telling you, a first year medical student, that no doctor I've spoken to has even asked me that. So I think you should take a lot from that, Sarah. I think that is absolutely amazing. But the only reason you got to that point is because of the process that you went through. It was not a list of questions that you are just going to enforce on a patient in front of you. You're responding, you're listening, you're changing, you're building towards that. You've built the rapport really well. And each way you wanted to, you moved seamlessly and effortlessly between all the different parts of the history. And the other thing I particularly liked, in 52 seconds in, when you talked about any history in the family, to be in a situation where if that comes up at that part of the consultation, and that's at the point, if the patient gives you an in terms of sharing, like something that you can then fill in another part of family history, so many medical students and so many doctors will glaze over it because they're not ready to receive that information until 3/4 of the way through the history. So then they don't want to hear it. But what you're doing is actually more advanced in terms of you want to get a holistic understanding of the person that's in front of you, both in wellness and unwellness, right? And then you're developing a rapport. So, I mean, Poppy, would you be happy if Sarah, if say you saw Sarah as a GP and that was the first time you saw her, would you be happy to see her again? Would you request to see Sarah in consultations? It'd be really good to hear your feedback, because that's my tuppence worth.
In a word, yes, because I felt like an individual. You made me feel like you were actually listening, because sometimes experts can, like you say, go through the checklist and they've definitely written down what you've said, but that's different to listening. That's different to actually digesting and taking in what you've said and then utilizing that knowledge. So the reason your questions went in such a chronological order is because you actually listened to the one and that led you to the next one. It wasn't, so you can tell when someone's not listening to you. You can tell when it's okay, cool. Oh, okay, so now I'm going to ask you, and it's like, you're going to ask me something that's completely different, that's got no relation to something that I've just said. I've just said something that really I was hoping you might pick up on, and maybe ask me, okay, well, that's interesting. Why do you think that is? Or how long ago was that? So in an answer, in a nutshell, yes, you made me feel like I wasn't a number, but I was a person.
Brilliant. Thank you. I really like that stress relief piece as well, Sarah, in terms of understanding that there's a lot going on. I thought you did well to go on mute and off mute, because clearly I couldn't manage that. But I think that was
the house. That's the only reason.
But that was pretty slick, right? We had to concentrate 100% on Poppy, to take in all the information and still think about Poppy and putting her at the center, because there's noise going on, so you're just going on and off mute. Those are the kind of skills that Generation Zoom kind of needs to learn and thrive, and you did that really well. It certainly didn't, I don't know, Poppy, did you even notice that Sarah was going on and off mute or not?
No, I didn't. I could see you looking down occasionally and looking at sort of where to go next, which was, that's absolutely fine. It's like someone having a clipboard in front of them. I still felt like you were engaged with me. I didn't feel like you were disconnecting. I felt like you were thinking of, the next question, but it wasn't, you were still asking me a question based upon my answer previously. But no, I didn't notice you were going on and off mute, but I just noticed you were looking down and up and down. But I still felt engaged with. And that's because of what you were asking me as well. If they were completely separate questions, you'd go, okay, you'll go through a tick list here. But because they were also personal, and it was personable in the way that it was framed. Yeah, and I just that last question's just got me, to be honest. That's what you don't. And Emma, have you found this as well? Once you're stable, it's like, okay. And I understand everyone's really busy, so you've got to look after patients that are not stable, but we're still there, we're still on medication, and we still want to know what's next.
Yeah. And that isn't a future consideration, and it was one of my biggest frustrations, because I kept saying, well, I'm on this and it's not really that great, but can you tell me if it's working? Simple question to me, and it was just fobbed off by the people who are meant to be the experts telling me to take this medication. So yeah, totally. It's refreshing in its basic terms, but it makes you just want to go and happy dance. Because when I heard that, Sarah, I literally was like, yeah. So yeah.
And in the pre-planning call, when we spoke about this, what kind of parallels and similarities do you see between your story and journey and what Poppy's just shared? Because we touched on it, but I think it'd be really useful for the students to kind of learn that and hear that as well.
My first neurologist after my first episode, Mr. Hassan, amazing man, love him to pieces, was there for me exactly as I need. I walked back in when he said, look, this is clinically isolated syndrome. I'm going to have to hand you over. And I said, oh, it's okay, because I've done all this research and I'm on the list with Dr. Federico already. And I found these lovely things about how I can improve my diet, and I can up my vitamin D, and I can do all these things to really boost my immune system. And he looked at me, deadpan, just looked at me as if to say, really? And I know he couldn't comment on that, but he could have just said, do you know what, I can't comment on how good it's going to be, but I just want to say well done for taking your condition and embracing it, because you're going to get so much more out of this. So well done for that bit.
Yeah.
That was all he needed to do. But literally, I could see what he was thinking. And I just went, well, I have a different reaction to most people because I see that as a red flag, as if to say, okay, I'm going to prove you wrong. But that whole, you are just put in a bucket. I've got MS. I've broken my arm and I've gone into A&E and my arm's falling off, but it's okay because that's MS, so we'll get a neurologist to it, is the most extreme example. It's not what happened to me, but that's what happens. Every little thing that goes wrong, oh, well, it's your MS.
Similar to pregnancy, that whenever someone's pregnant, even if it's clearly not, people will say, oh, well, maybe it's related to pregnancy. Let's just send it to Obs and Gynae. So, okay, that's really interesting, and thanks for that.
Interestingly enough, I was chatting to somebody today, just very, very quickly, who is 63, and we were talking about exactly this same setup. And she said, I'm 63, I'm not dying, but there are bits of me that break, and it's not due to old age. But I get put in the geriatric, oh, it's just old age, pat you on the head and send you off. So this happens across disciplines. It's not just conditions. But
it's for you guys to change, right? Erna, Sarah, everyone else on the call, Daisy, Isabel, Lucy. This is, you've given an hour of your time in the evening. Somebody said to me that development doesn't happen 9 to 5. And it's equally true for me still working. So if you're taking that mentality now, I think it's really positive. So, I'd just hand over to Poppy just before we wrap up. Apart from saying thank you so much for giving us an hour of your time. We really, really appreciate it. And if you've got any thoughts, Poppy, just before we close.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you, and absolutely my pleasure. And I know feels the same as well, to be given the opportunity. It's got to be worth something, hasn't it? All the don't swear, all the troubles we've been through. All the troubles we've been through for it to count for something, and what you're all doing is amazing. And just to reiterate what's already been said in terms of helping that individual feel like a person and not a number. You want an essence of familiarity. See, I can't say the word when it's not 7 o'clock at night. They want to feel listened to, and they want to be heard. They really do. They want to be heard. I think back to the diary that my mum kept, and we had so many signs and so much information in that diary that we kept off our own back, off our own time. And I think it could have got me to where I am now a lot quicker. Though I've had some amazing consultants, amazing doctors over the years, but I was churned in and out of the system for far too long. And, it'll be doctors like yourselves, medical professionals like yourselves, that will mean that somebody doesn't have to go through that, because you listen to them early and you pass them on to where they need to go quicker, or you picked up on something quicker than someone else did because you actually listened to what they said to you, rather than, and I hope you don't mind me wording it this way, but throw medication at somebody, because that's often what can happen. It's just take the steroids, take the antibiotics, off you go. But not saying that they don't have a place. They certainly saved me. But just to listen, that you could get so much from just listening. We need to be listening to you as well. That absolutely is the case. You are the experts. But as the expert, you might pick up on something that saves a life and helps somebody and changes their life. So yeah, that's all I can say. And just thank you again for having me here tonight.
No, thank you, Poppy. Thanks so much.
Yeah, honestly, thank you for all of you. Like, you've given us a really good opportunity here.
Yeah, we don't really get patient contact. I know that in my clinical placement, I still haven't heard or talked to a patient. So thank you very much, both you and Emma, for last week and obviously this week. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Welcome. It's wonderful to do this. The one thing that they haven't done, Kish, is peer review.
No, that's probably worth doing. As anyone, 100% worth doing. Sorry, I completely forgot. That's good. I need you guys to keep me on track just as much. So the rest, in terms of feedback from Daisy, Isabel, Lucy, Erna, in terms of what you saw between Poppy and Sarah, if you've got any thoughts or comments.
Yeah, I thought it was really good. Like, you seemed really genuine, like you actually were interested and cared, which can really be hard to convey over Zoom.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lucy.
Sorry.
Oh, go on, Daisy.
Sure. I wrote down, like, I thought it was really conversational. Like, it didn't feel like you were just like going through loads of questions. It was just like you were just having a chat with her, which made it come across a lot more genuine. I thought you did really well.
Completely agree. Thanks, Daisy. Isabel?
Yeah, I thought it was really nice how you didn't just focus on the illness, because so much cannot like be put, like when you're seeing a patient, focus on the illness. You actually
Well, I think she's frozen.
Oh.
expectations, and you summarised really well. So yeah.
Also, like in our, when we learn history taking, it's a different structure. We actually don't learn it the way that you did that Dropbox thing. So for Sarah to obviously take it on board, like in this hour, and then completely reform her way of history taking to this way. Like, I know that I was lost when I was looking at you doing it. I was thinking, we haven't done this.
So feel free to mark me, Anna, on the standard that you have as well.
No, it's
And
completely
that's
different.
really interesting to share.
It's like, say Poppy, if Poppy age 12 came in, maybe we'd do it like that, because it's all that Socrates sort of thing. But the way that you've sort of taught is like doing like sort of checking over. It's all the psychosocial stuff, and Sarah like completely like she like hit the points on all of it. It's not a case of just doing the clinical stuff like, do you take any of this, do you take any of that? Like, it's like, what do you think, how do you feel? It's like the more ice, like expectations, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, ideas, concerns, expectations. Completely. Sorry, Poppy, on.
I copied Kishan from that.
What was that? Sorry, Sarah?
I was thinking of like stuff we're doing class, and then I was watching Kishan when he was doing his, and I was like,
it's not applicable.
The way we do it. And I was like, let me just like talk and then see what I remember. And then some of the things I was jotting down, and I was just like, let me just talk. But it just made me think, I was like, the way that we're taught it is not like a rigid thing. And obviously they say it's not a rigid thing, but when we're being taught it, I was like, no, this is a rigid thing. In my mind, I was thinking it's a rigid thing. And then when I saw you doing it, I was like, okay, maybe it's actually like seeing it, it made it real that it actually wasn't a rigid thing to do.
And you got the rewards from that, Sarah, in terms of you came up with a question. Taking that sort of cognitive, diverse approach to this, you got the rewards by asking a question to Poppy that has never ever been asked. So sorry, Poppy, you're going to say something as well.
I won't keep you any longer because I know it's late and everyone's had a long day, but I just wanted to also mention that often there's an authoritarian relationship there that's unspoken of. Emma and myself, I think, are in the same position now, where we've gone through all of this for such a long time that we're now not afraid of speaking up or saying something. And I now incidentally interview doctors for my job, which maybe was a subconscious thing that I've ended up doing this, who knows. But I was scared to speak up if there was something I was unsure of, for one, or didn't agree with. So the way in which that, I don't want to say interview, but that because it's not the way the conversation was conducted helped myself and will help another patient feel as though they can say, if they don't understand something, like, oh, I didn't actually get what you said there, or I don't 100% know how to use my medication. I know I probably should, but the more comfortable you will allow them to feel, the more likely they are going to speak up and tell you if they don't actually know something, and they won't be too embarrassed to say, or if they don't agree with something. And sometimes them not agreeing with it might help you understand something a bit more, you know, maybe there's something that they've not mentioned or something like that. But yeah, just basically patients can often feel scared because you are all so intelligent and you are the experts, and it can make you sometimes feel as a patient that I don't know best and I shouldn't say anything, when actually we should be all working together. So the more comfortable you make us feel, the more likely we are going to go, actually, can I say something? And then it helps everybody.
Cool.
Having true faith in your medical professionals is amazing. Even now, if I've got a problem, I'll WhatsApp Dr. F. He's in Moscow, he's 5 hours ahead, but I trust him. I would get on a plane if I had a broken leg, and I would go to Dr. F and say, how do you fix this? Because I trust him more than any other person I've ever known.
Absolutely. And because and they make you feel comfortable enough that you can do that, and there's, you know, you're not afraid to ask. But I've so many patients that I've spoken to, I'm sure Emma's the same, have been scared to say they don't actually know how to use their medication because they've been perhaps diagnosed with that condition for quite a while, and actually they've just never really asked. And then it gets past that point and they feel like, I can't say to my expert because they're the expert, they'll tell me off. Or there's just little things like that just to bear in mind. We know you're the expert, we want you to be the expert, but we don't want to be scared as well. So the more comfortable you make us feel, the more likely we're going to tell you more. Yeah.
You've just reminded me of something. When I had the central line, so I had hard line this side, central line this side, with my 3 little minions, as I called them, it was making me cough. And because I'd done all the chemo, I'd done everything else, it was just there as they wanted to take blood. It was like a PICC line, basically. And I just said to Dr. F, I don't know, this is weird. I want to cough. It's just, and he went, do you want one in your arm instead? I was like, is that possible? I was like, yeah. I was like, yeah. He went, hold still. Don't do anything. I'm like, I don't want to cough anymore. This is amazing. But that profound experience, literally just talking to you there and hearing that has just brought it back to me. So yeah, wow, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. That's just, hopefully it's been helpful, and thank you for having us.
No, it was awesome. Thank you, Poppy, and thank you, Em. And cheers, guys. If Lucy wouldn't mind sending around a feedback form to the people that are here.
I was just about to say, I've emailed it to everyone. I just added it.
It's all over it.
I've literally got it opened up right now.
Amazing, well done. And we'll be in touch, because I think certainly Em would like to do more of these. Poppy, you're more than welcome if you'd like to get involved.
More than happy.
And yeah, thank you so much for giving us an hour and a quarter of your, what day is it? Thursday evening.
Thursday.
We really appreciate it. There we go. Thank you.
It's all merged.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? So yeah, cool. Have a great evening, everybody.
Well, I think Emma's got.
Can I ask a quick question? Sorry, I'm holding my hand up like I'm at school. If you could interview anyone, what conditions would you like to see? Because I will do my best to go and try and find people who would talk to you, because I'm going patient collecting for you guys. So if you tell me what you're interested in, or, you know, I can't promise you anything, but just give me some feedback through Kish. Tell me what you want to see, and I'll see if I can make it happen for you, because I think this is wonderful. And thank you so much.
Cheers, Em. If you guys put that on the forms as well, that's a good way to collate it, and I'll share all that with them and you, obviously, Poppy, as well. And yeah, I'll see you guys. We've got a talk on the 11th. That's in normal hours that I've still got to do. That's on teamwork and communication and consulting skills and all that sort of stuff. So I look forward to seeing you then. But yeah, thanks, guys. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
See you guys soon. Cheers. Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Oh, Poppy left as well. Thanks for that, Em. I thought it was quite good.
Really, really interesting. So many things that came up, and so many things that I want to ask Poppy as well, because there's some things that will overlap. It sounds like mast cell activation syndrome that she's got.
Yeah, sounds very similar, doesn't it? I mean, it's the stuff that's. I think, I tell you what, if we stop recording this, and then it'd be great to get Poppy. She might ring me actually afterwards. I don't know if she does. I'll